Hi guys, welcome back, Eric's UK here. The other day I did a video for Pathfinder Next, and in some of the comments there were some interesting points of view about the Golarion campaign setting for Pathfinder, and it made me think about all the campaign settings I've run, played in, and the one homebrew one I made many years ago, and what I liked and disliked about them. And I thought, while I'm sitting here waiting for the TV repairman to turn up, why not do a quick vid for it? Despite Dragonlance being my original favourite campaign setting, the original one that I actually played with was the World of Greyhawk. It came in a goldish brown box, as I recall, with like 3 mounted armoured knights on the front. And I probably ran that for about 6 months before moving on to Dragonlance. It's one of those settings that I like because it's generic. You know, you can put it kind of is to me really what the world of D&D is like in my head, because you can put anything you want in there. You know, obviously it's things like the Temple of Elemental Evil and so on are part of that world. So as I understand it, the old modules like White Plume Mountain and so on. But whatever you've got somewhere in that campaign world to put it. And I like that. I really do. The problem is, for me, that Greyhawk is just too big. You're looking at a huge chunk of a continent. We don't even know what the rest of the continent looks like, as far as I'm aware. It's huge, it's massive. It's just far too big than you'll ever do anything with. And I think that's what turned me off. I did ponder partway through 3.5's run on going back to Greyhawk. I bought the 2 like gazetteer style books that they were done, the thin one and the fairly chunky later version, but never actually got it off the ground. I just don't think I had it in me in the end to do it. Dragonlance was always a favourite because I read the book before I even managed to pick up basic D&D. I had read the Dragonlance Chronicles and the Twins trilogy. Pretty much everything after that novel-wise was absolute rubbish, and just avoid it if you can. That's my suggestion for the day. I for one like the setting. It's a nice romanticised style D&D setting. Again, it has areas that you want. You know, it's got areas. You know, there's a bit of a desert. You've got ice. You've got effectively. It's not really jungle, but you've effectively got somewhere of a more warmer. You know, it runs from cold at the south, warmer in the north. You can easily fit things in. And you've got swamps and forests and everything else that you might ever want. But really, it always struck me as being a game where there's a bit more political in the background. Not necessarily a political game, but you've got the power behind the throne, as it were. You know, you've got the Dragon High Lords, and you've got all their successors, as it were, after the war. You've got the Knights of Slamnia. You know, you've got a kind of political level as well that makes it feel a little bit more alive than most settings. And I never minded Kenda, Gully Dwarves and Tinker Gnomes. I understand them better, I think, than most people do. They're not as bad as everyone makes out. It's just that most people latch on to one aspect of those characters, and that's it. So I like Dragonlance, but I gave up on it primarily because TSR screwed it. When they changed Dragonlance over to the Saga system, and then they did stupid things like the Chaos War and then the War of Souls, it pretty much destroyed the setting for me. I couldn't go back to that. Even running a couple of 3.0 campaigns and 3.5, using the world but without taking the Chaos War, it still didn't feel right. I knew in my head that they'd moved it along, and it was done badly. They also did the Second Continent, Taladas, which I picked up. I only ever ran one campaign there and never felt it worked. It just didn't feel Dragonlance. I think pretty much everything for Kryn is Ancelon. Adding anything else to it is just, you're slowly leaching away the very life essence of what makes Dragonlance what it is in the books. So that's why I kind of gave up on that. And then you kind of hit the run of second edition AD&D campaign settings from TSR, and I went through all of them pretty much. I loved Dark Sun. Dark Sun was an odd one for me because Dark Sun was the only campaign setting I found that truly only works under the system it was designed for. I've run Dark Sun using 3.5. I've run Dark Sun using Rollmaster. You cannot get the same feel of setting as you do running it under 2nd edition AD&D. And I find that really bizarre, because it should be the setting that makes the feel, but it's not, it's also the system. But unfortunately it was another setting that fell prey to that TSR mentality at the time. There were several novels in a series that carried the story on, and they ended up killing off 90% of the villains, the major villains, and then they moved the campaign setting along to that point, and it really just didn't feel the same world then at all. I'm a big fan of saying don't move the timeline along when it comes to sorry, that's my phone. When it comes to campaign settings. Now that's kind of odd, because with Vampire the Masquerade and everything, I like the meta plot and I like time moving on, but that's set in the real world. With a fantasy campaign setting, don't move the timeline along. Have it fixed in place, have it set, and let the players and the GM move it along. And Dark Sun failed in that regard. I still have my box set of the second run of Dark Sun when they expanded it north and south of the standard tire region, and I'm hoping that when 5th comes out, because they have just, or are going to at this time, I forget which, re-release 1st edition, the 3 core books. I'm hoping they do the same with the 2nd edition, and if so I will buy those and try and convince some players to play a Dark Sun campaign. Ravenloft was one that I never really got into. I like Gothic horror, but it only felt like 2 or 3 of the realms that they presented were actually Gothic horror, and the rest of them were just weird for the sake of being weird. I'm sorry, a realm run by a giant mind flayer brain, and it's a strange desert with bolts of lightning. Yeah, that's not Gothic horror, that's just weird. I can't remember if that was in the actual box set or if that was in the Islands of Dread expansion, but it just seemed like one I could never have run a campaign in because you were too isolated. You pretty much had to pick one domain and that was it. That's what you were stuck with. Planescape was another one I never got on with either. I like my campaigns. I like my Outer Planes. Sorry, to be kind of how 1st edition did it, which sounds a little odd, I suppose. You had a realm where there was Olympus. You had a realm where there was the Norse gods with Asgard. You had one for the Roman gods, and so on and so forth. They were bizarre because they were Outer Planes and different realities, but you kind of understood where they were coming from. With Planescape, they basically turned it on its head and just made it the most bizarre setting I've ever found. Now I know it's got a following, and power to you if you like it, but for me it just didn't work. And the fact that basically instead of being a setting on its own, it began to override the normal campaign world as well. It didn't sit well with me. Spelljammer was another one. We only meddled with that a little bit. I quite liked it as an idea. I don't think it ultimately works though. I mean, there were some great ideas that you could have done with it, but I just think it was a step in the wrong direction. Really, it was just it's like Ravenloft and Planescape. It's just a little too out there, I think, for the majority of people. Nice try though. Other campaign settings that I have used, I tried the Dawnforge one, which came out for 3rd edition, which was designed to be the your campaign world thousands of years in the past, before when magic was fantastic and could raise cities and everything else, and you had these ancient empires and I ran not even one campaign. I think we got about 4, maybe 5 scenarios in, and then we basically gave up. Primarily because rather than doing it as a campaign setting, they basically rewrote the rules a little bit. So your race wasn't as it was presented in the rule book. It was, you've got this, but then you've got these slight other things. So elves weren't just immune to magical sleep and paralysis. You might not be immune to magical sleep. You might decide that you're immune to magic missile, which is what we might have one elf do. Because you picked a first level spell that you were immune to. There were no gods particularly at this point, so you had two, I think it might even have been three, I don't have the books anymore to check, but you had, instead of like clerics and druids, you had these three weird divine-esque caster types. And that's what turned us off. We wanted to be able to just use the rules as is. And it's one of my big turn-offs of campaign settings when they try and rewrite stuff around the rules. If you can't do your setting within the rules, then perhaps you should just do it as a generic setting or pick another system, But fair point to them to try it. I played Eberron and I hate it. I hate it more than any other campaign setting that I've ever played. The reason being is don't get me wrong, I think that the guy that came up with it had a fantastic idea, but I don't like magic as technology. I don't like the idea of if the levels of magic in the core rules were the standard, what would the world look like? Oh, it's this with flying magic powered boats and steam trains and everything else. It's like, no. I got miffed with Forgotten Realms when you had like continual light globes outside of buildings to act as street lamps and stuff. No, D&D for me will always be a Dark Ages medieval setting. It's not Renaissance with magic or something like that. And I think using that destroys my sense of verisimilitude in the setting. So a friend of ours ran a short-lived campaign. I think we only did 6 or 7 levels before he died, and I gave it a shot. I liked the character I had. I played a Warforged who was Warforged going Warforged Juggernaut, who pretty much did exactly what you told him. He was very literal with what orders he was given, and he was a great fun character to play. But as a setting, can't abide it. It's no. What else have I played? Scarred Lands was one I was really big into at one point, which was from Sword and Sorcery Studios, aka White Wolf. And time that the Player's Handbook was released for 3.0, they released their first book, which was the Creature Collection, I think it was. My books are in storage at the moment for those ones, so I think it was Creature Collection. And basically it was a monster manual of these weird, bizarre creatures that existed in their world, Skarn. And there was this nice bit at the back of the book which gave a description of the rundown. There had been this Titans War / Gods War, gods rebelling against the Titans, overthrowing them, and in this huge, centuries-long conflict, the world itself was left scarred and battered and what have you. And I loved this because I've always been a fan of Greek myths. Even before I got to D&D, things like the Clash of the Titans and the stories of the Minotaur and Medusa and all this sort of stuff, and the gods and Titans. I loved it, so I had this notion in my head, this could be it, this could be the campaign setting for me. And initially I really liked it. I was trying at one point to try and make it more ancient Greece and less D&D. But what destroyed it for me again was two things really. One, they started releasing a load of splat books with I would say hundreds, but dozens of new prestige classes, which were just designed to be more power gaming than the last. And also with every new release, it got further and further away from that initial Greek myth style Gods Titans War thing that originally drew me to the setting. And it was just becoming just another campaign setting, and it was really, and it just destroyed any love I had for that setting, which was a shame because I really liked it. I got rid of most of the splat books, but I still got the guidebooks for the 2 main continents, and then they did another one for the continents they hadn't actually got time to do before they cancelled it. And so you never know, I might run that again, but tweak it the way I want it tweaked. And Then along came Pathfinder and Golarion, and I wasn't going to pick it up. Pretty much, I was using Pathfinder to run the games I was doing. But then my local store got a random copy of, I think it was the Guide to Corvosa in, and I picked that up and I looked over it and I went, this could be interesting. And so I spent probably a good couple £100 tracking down the other source books, seeing the Sea World Guide and so on. And I really like the setting. It's nice. It's got areas where you can, if you want to run a Gothic horror style game, then you've got a reason for that. If you want to run an Egyptian themed game, you've got areas for that. You want to run the Lost World or Monkey Kingdoms, you've got that. You want, anything you want, there's a region you can pick. And I've picked one. Varizia is mine because there's only like 3 major cities. Everything else is pretty much wilderness. I can put whatever I want in there. It's perfect for what I'm doing. And I like it, but as time has gone on, I have felt more and more despondent with it because of that very reason, because it doesn't gel very well. Now, I can see why they've done it, because it then appeals to more people, but if you're going to throw out an entire campaign setting, then you need to make sure that it works for everybody that's going to buy it. And so I am at this point in time pondering the creation of another homebrew setting. I've only ever done one homebrew that lasted, and that was about 20 years ago. I did a world called Traken. Unfortunately, we ran several campaigns in it. Unfortunately, about 12 years ago when I moved house, I ended up having to bin it because I just didn't have the space to put it. It was all just sheets of paper in a folder, and it's a shame because I enjoyed that one. But I think the problem I've got at the moment is I'm so used to running published campaign settings that it seems like a really daunting prospect. But you never know, I might actually get off my backside and do it. Anyway, this has gone on for about 8 minutes longer than I had intended. I hope I haven't bored any of you by this. It's just my thoughts on the various campaign settings. Most of them all TSR because that's what I've played and run. And just some insight into my thoughts on those settings. Anyway, until next time, take care and good day.